So, obviously, you notice there's some of the prerequisites in this where they've asked that you all should be aware of the concepts of demand, supply, utility, producer, and cost curves. Okay. Now, remember the topics that we'll be studying today are, while it's a self-study, they're critical for you to understand the main economics topics that is going to be covered as a part of CFA Level 1. Okay. So please don't take this lightly. These topics should be understood in conceptual clarity. Now, obviously, economics comes from the two words oikos and nomos, right? As you can see before you. So basically, the background was when it was called the house of how to manage. So managing households. That's where entirely economic came from. Okay. Today, obviously, we've gone into a much more detail where we talk about microeconomics and macroeconomics. Okay. Now, what we'll cover today is essentially microeconomics. Microeconomics, as the name suggests, is micro. So it's all about individual, right? So effectively means where I'm studying individual parts separately. When I study the entire part as a whole, that is macroeconomics. So let's say when I'm dealing with poverty, income distribution, GDP, and so on, those are microeconomic because that is macro because that is dealing with the entire country as a whole, and that's a study of a whole rather than study of an individual. When I study individual aspects like individual demand, supply, individual concepts around wealth, income, uh, types of competition, that becomes microeconomics. Okay. Within this, we'll have certain theory of demand, supply, the theory of the firm, okay, and so on. Those all will be covered in that. Now, before we go into the details today, okay, what are the broad two types of markets? Okay, markets. So obviously there's goods markets where you actually buy and sell goods, right? And there's a factor market where you deal with factors of production. Okay. Now, when I say factors of production, I'm basically talking about uh, the main things which are helping the production. Okay. Now, essentially, there are four factors of production: land, labor, right? Capital, and you won't see that here, but entrepreneurial, right? Basically, what people do. Now, land, labor, and capital are used are used as factors for producing goods and services. Okay, so therefore, when I talk about markets, I'll talk about goods market, which essentially involves a place where people can actually trade in goods and services, and the factor markets where the people can go and buy other things which are used for the goods and services, which include your land, labor, capital, and obviously entrepreneurial services. Clear? Okay. Now, going further down to the economy. In the economy, who are the two main players that exist in the economy which are working together in the market? Okay. Now, these players essentially are households and firms. Clear? Now, households, as the name suggests, are the people who are basically comprising of your household people, all your people who live in houses and are providing you they are providing you their land or their labor, basically their sweat, their efforts, or they're giving you money, which will help you to invest in your business and generate goods and services. So households are the people who are actually owning these factor of production, and they're helping you produce the goods and services by giving you these factor of production. So either they'll sell it to you, they'll rent it to you, are we clear? So that refers to my household. Clear? Who are the firms? Now, the firms are the people who are taking these taking these factors of production from the household, right? And using that to produce goods and service. Clear? So all the goods and services which are being produced by these firms are not just produced on their own. It is being done by using the factors coming from these households. Clear? Now, obviously, they'll have to pay them something in return. So these firms will be paying the households money in the form of, now be careful, if it is land, right? If you're taking land, they will pay them rent for the land. If they're taking the labor, they'll pay them wages. And obviously, if they're borrowing the capital, they're paying them interest. Correct? So, households are giving firms land, labor, capital, and the firms are giving these households rent, wages, and interest. Is that clear? And together, they are trying to produce goods and services for the economy. Clear with that logic? Obviously, apart from this, another type of capital markets called as capital markets. Now, the word capital market, okay, refers to, obviously, the word is very straightforward. Capital means where the capital is raised and attracted and issued. So if I go and raise more shares, I'm getting money. That's a equity market. If I go and borrow funds through debentures, that's a debenture market. If I go and raise debts, it's a debt market. So capital market is where capital is raised. Obviously, from where the capital raised? Through the savings that are maintained by the household. So those savings are converted into investments. Correct? Without the capital market, savings can't convert investments. Obviously, tomorrow if you want to invest in share market, you want to invest in, say, in banks, you want to go invest in debts, you have to use the capital market. Therefore, the capital market is very essential for converting the savings into investments. Clear? So can I conclude that there are broadly three types of markets? Goods market, goods and services are bought and sold. Factor market, where factors of production are bought and sold. And capital market, where the savings are converted into investments. Clear? Now, let's go to the concept of demand and supply. Okay. So when I say demand and supply, obviously understand the concept and then we'll go to the law. Okay. Now, demand is what basically? So let's leave the demand function. What is demand? Demand is nothing but the amount of goods or service that someone wants at a certain price. So let's say if people want to buy oranges for 100 rupees. So that means I can say the demand for oranges is 100 rupees pay around 20 units or 30 units. So that's demand. When people are demanding something at a certain price, it is referring to something that is desired or willing to buy. Clear? So therefore, the demand function refers to quantity demanded based on the price of the goods, the income, and obviously many other factors. Okay. Now, essentially, demand depends on various factors. I'll come to that shortly. But broadly, it depends on price, income, and price of other goods, other substitutes, complementary goods, and so on. Okay. Let's come to the most important concept, the law of demand. Okay. Now, what is the law of demand? Right. Now, the law of demand means as the price is up or down, the quantity demanded also changes, but inversely. That means if the price goes up, the quantity demanded will go down. If the price goes down, the quantity demanded will go up. This is called the law of demand. So I'll try to go a little faster, but stop me if you guys are not familiar with this concept. Okay, so basically, if you see, and I'm going to use a graph to demonstrate so that's easier. If I have an X and Y axis, right? So basically, this normally the Y axis we normally use for price and the X axis will be for quantity demanded. Okay. Now, suppose the price is, let's say, 100 rupees. So then the quantity demanded might be, let's say, 3 units. Okay. But suppose the price falls down to 70 rupees. Obviously, as the price falls down, the quantity demanded will increase. Maybe it goes up to 60. Correct? Obviously, as let's say price goes up to 120. So this quantity demanded, which was at this much, this will then fall down to maybe 20. Right? So as the price goes up, the quantity demanded falls. As the price goes down, the quantity demanded increases. So you notice that if I connect all these dots, right? If I connect these dots, basically what I get is a demand curve, which is showing that as the price goes down, the quantity demanded goes up, and as the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. Clear? So this means that demand is inversely related to price. Clear? And this is exactly what we mean by saying demand law. Okay, so law of demand says that as the price goes up, the quantity demanded falls. As the price goes down, the quantity demanded increases. Clear? Okay, we'll see more examples for other parts of the diagram. Okay, now let's go to the supply function. Supply function, or the concept of supply, is nothing but the amount that any supplier is willing to supply for a given price. Okay, so basically, if the person wants to sell, let's say X 100, 200, 300, that is called the amount of supply. Okay, obviously it depends on selling price, correct? And the cost of production is relevant here. So labor, capital, and so on. So supply is directly connected to the cost of labor, capital, and so on. What does the law of supply say? Obviously, it's opposite to the law of demand. In demand, I will demand more, the price falls down. In the law of supply, I will supply more only if the price goes up. So in the supply part, if I draw a similar diagram, and let's say this is price and this is quantity supplied, as the price goes up, as the, let's say, price so much, I'm selling so much. If the price goes up, I will be willing to sell more amount of units at this price, which means the supply curve looks like this. Clear? So this is my supply curve, and this is the law of supply. That everything else is constant, price is directly related to quantity supplied, which means that quantity supplied increases if the price increases, quantity supplied decreases if the price decreases. Clear? Okay, so this is what basically demand and supply is all about, right? Now let's go to the curve. I already showed you the demand curve, I explained to you. The demand curve is always downward sloping because I explained to you that when the price goes down, the demand goes up. Same with supply curve, always upward because the price upward is directly affecting your supply. So this is directly related and this is inversely related, right? Now what's the logic behind it? Obviously they try to find out, okay, apart from emotional or reasons, there is also a reason that diminishing marginal utility का एक जो law है, there's a law where we say that as you keep consuming more and more, your marginal benefits will decrease. Example, let's say you're feeling thirsty now. So if I give you a glass of water, right? The utility for that water is very high. But let's say you finish drinking one glass of water, or let's say you drank a cold drink. Will you want to have immediately another glass or drink? No, right? Because your thirst already quenched. Maybe you'll want to have, but it will not give you the same satisfaction and utility as the earlier drink. Clear? This is called diminishing marginal benefits. So that means your marginal benefits is there, but it's diminishing. The first glass gave you a lot of satisfaction. The second glass will give you lesser satisfaction, and the third will give you much lesser. So the same logic explains that if you want to buy more, you will be willing to pay less because your satisfaction is decreasing, right? And we also say that a rational user is always going to equate his satisfaction with his price. So he'll say, if I'm not so satisfied, I will not pay the price. He may be willing to pay the price which is equal to utility, right? So because of the law of diminishing marginal utility, this law is dictating the behavior where his willingness to pay for the next product is reduced because its utility has also reduced. Clear? So more and more quantity will give you less and less incremental benefit or rather marginal benefit. The marginal benefit is reducing with every consumption. Okay, obviously there are exceptions to it, like example, drinks, addictions, there's no exception because they're the more they have, the more they want to have. But those are exceptions, clear? Now, let's come to supply side. Why do you think a supplier is willing to supply more and more only at a higher price? Because he knows that as he produces more, his marginal costs are increasing. So because of increasing marginal cost, his supply will also be higher only if he is compensated with a higher price. Got it? So here he is willing to supply at a marginal cost, which is a minimum price, and he wants that to increase as he keeps producing more and more. Clear? So here the minimum price that he's willing to pay is nothing but your marginal cost. Okay? So you got the reason why a demand curve is downward sloping because it's inverse and because people are equating utility with price. But supply curve is upward sloping because he's equating the selling price with the cost that he going to incur. Clear? Any questions? Just give me 1 minute. Right. Now let's understand a few concepts around these demand curve, supply curve by looking at movements. Okay. Now if you see a diagram before you, I am looking at a movement along the demand curve, right? Now, what does movement along the demand curve really mean? So, if I have this demand curve, which is shown before you, right? Now, a movement along the curve means any movement from one point. So, let's say I have point, this is point X, okay? Now, at point X is where I am basically demanding Q1 at P1 price. So I'm asking you Q1 units at P1 price. Suppose P1 moves to P0. That means as per demand curve, Q1 will move to Q0, right? So as the price goes down, quantity goes up. So what's happening to my demand curve? I'm moving from point X to point Y, right? So as P1 goes to P0, Q1 goes to Q0. So my point, I was on point X, I move point Y. This movement from point X to point Y is called movement along the curve. This is a movement along the curve. Clear? Now, if you look at the diagram closely, you'll notice that I have actually increased my demand. So when I'm moving from point X to point Y, this is called as extension, not increase, extension of demand, where my demand has increased because of a change in price, and therefore it's called extension. I cannot call this as a increase. It's an extension because along the demand curve. Now the key thing that you need to understand here is essentially that you have considered this movement on the curve. Now the same way if you consider movement in the opposite direction, let's say from point Y to point X, right? If I consider movement from point Y to point X, obviously you'll notice this is more of a contraction demand where the demand has actually fallen, correct? And that's because the price has gone up. So when I consider P0 to P1 and Q0 to Q1, this is referred to as a contraction in demand. Clear, guys? Okay. So this is a concept of is considered when there's a movement along the supply curve. Okay. That means when price is going from P1 to P0 to P1, supply will also increase. The supply curve is referred to as extension of supply. Now, obviously, why is the movement taking place? Because the supply has gone up as the price has increased. Demand, movement along on the demand curve, increase in demand, extension, contraction of demand on the demand curve upwards, extension of supply, movement on the supply curve, right? But you're moving upwards, and contraction of supply, movement on the supply curve, but you're going downwards. Clear? Okay, I'm just going to put in PPT mode, but the way. Yeah. All right. Now, if this is called a shift, okay, and you know the word is extension contraction, how do you refer to the word increase or decrease? Where does that kind of play? Okay. Remember this extent decrease. So increase or decrease is different from extension or contraction, in which scenario basically the entire demand curve is shifting. Okay. Let's look at this example here for that purpose. Okay, look at this. So let's say as the original demand curve is here, right? As the demand, okay, goes up, it increases outward. This is called increase in demand. Okay. Now that means the original demand curve is
Sir, will
shifting
you please
to
make
the
your
right.
screen full
Now
screen?
remember the word is right. Don't say up or down. You can say outwards, to the right or to the left. Okay. Now when it's moving to the right, it looks like this. See, the price is here. Let's say price is P0, quantity is Q0. But when the quantity demanded increases, even though price is the same, quantity demand has increased from this point to this point, and the price is constant. This is called increase in demand, where there's a shift in the demand curve. Got it? Same way, same price, let's say you demanded less, it has gone down to Q2. This is called a shift on the left hand side, and this is called a decrease in demand. Got it? Increase in demand, outward shift, quantity demand gone up. Decrease in demand, downward shift, quantity demand gone down. Same funda can apply for supply, where let's say original supply curve is 0. If you shift it, remember I said to right and left, right? Don't say up or down, you'll get confused. If you shift to the right, it's called increase. Why? Because earlier you are supplying so much, now you're supplying so much. So when you're willing to supply more at the same price, it's a shift to the right, which is called as increase. If you're willing to supply less at the same price, it is called a leftward shift in the round curve, which is a decrease in demand, decrease in supply. Clear? So increase supply is rightward shift, whose actually is on the right hand side down. Leftward shift is a decrease supply. Means you're supplying less goods at the same price and increases more goods at the same price. Okay? Clear? So if we understand demand and supply is like this, what exactly do you mean by stable demand? Now, this is very interesting. Basically, stable demand means, let's say the demand curve was like this and supply curve is like this. So this is the price at which I should set the price. This is called stable. That means if the price is set at the point where the two are meeting, the economy is stable. Clear? Now let's say this is the price at which it should be in the market, P0. Okay, let's say it should be 100. But the market price is 120. Okay, the price higher. Just want some context. If the price is more than the stable price, then what will happen? People will not demand as much. The demand will be only so much, but the supply will be more than that. It might be, let's say, the demand. The people want to demand, let's say, 200 units, but supply obviously is almost, let's say, 300. Just for a simple example. That means at 120, the demand is much lesser and the supply much low. This gap, this gap here is referred to as what? Excess supply. So this supply is extra, right, by 100 units. This supply has to be taken care of. And this is important. Okay. So this scenario is a problem. Same way, let's say the price was suppose 100, but the price is only 70. So obviously price 70 is less, then there'll be more people demanding and less people willing to sell. Correct? And if that happens, then you'll have a shortage. You'll have a shortage. Okay. So if the price is at equilibrium, that's stable. If the price is more, then people will demand less, supply will be more, there'll be excess supply. If the price is too less, then there'll be excess demand. Clear? Obviously, both are not favorable, correct? And therefore, we say it's always good to have stable equilibrium, not excess supply scenario or an excess demand scenario. Clear? Okay. So that is stable equilibrium. Now, obviously, what is unstable equilibrium? Okay. Now, when the supply curve is obviously downward sloping, there is stable equilibrium. Our supply curve intersects. See, remember, the supply curve should intersect always the demand curve from the top. Okay. And that's where you'll be able to demonstrate equilibrium. Correct. So if you see your demand curve is here, supply curve should go here, but it's still going downward, but from the top. That will be still show stability here. Okay. So are we clear what is stable? And we also need to understand why is it that there will always be a stable equilibrium? Because if it's not stable, then excess supply will push the price down. Excess demand will push the pricing up. Clear? Okay. And that's what we mean by stable equilibrium. Okay. Now, what is unstable equilibrium? Like I told you, the demand curve should be intersecting from the top. What if the demand is intersecting from the bottom part? In this example, you have demand curve instead of the top, it is coming from this side. Okay. Now, normally supply curve is not. I am demonstrating excess demand here and excess supply here. This is showing instability, right? Where obviously you can't have excess demand and no supply and excess supply here. So when the demand curve is negatively sloped and intersects the demand curve from below, then I'm looking at instability. Okay, similarly, now suppose the supply curve is not a straight line, but it's a curved line. Okay, instead of being this line, it became this line. Then what do? In that case, you'll notice that there is a bit of unstable equilibrium, because if it's that way and the demand curve is downward sloping, then you'll find there are 2 points on which the supply curve will intersect. And first one obviously is fair enough because that is stable. If it intersects here, that's good. But here, if it stays here, that's good. But here, if it turns back to this, okay, it turns backwards and again intersects the demand curve, then that is called unstable equilibrium, because not a real equilibrium. Okay. Okay. So we have stable equilibrium where it's happening normal part and the market price is equal to. We have unstable equilibrium where the direction of curve could be different. Okay. It's either downward below or it is a U-shaped curve. Okay. Clear so far? Now, let's come to the concept of consumer surplus. Now, consumer surplus, okay, is a very interesting concept. It means it's the amount that a consumer is willing to pay compared to what he is actually paying. Let's say this is a demand curve. You answered by now that a demand curve means at every point of demand curve, a person is willing to pay so much money at every point, right? That means that let's say the market price is actually set at so much. This is a market price based on the supply curve. Maybe I set the price so much. So this is the price in the market and this is the quantity demanded. Okay. If you look at the upper part, of the demand curve, all these points were points where he's willing to pay a more price, but he ended up paying only this much price. Right? Let's say it's 100. He is going to pay 120, 140, 150, 170. He is going to pay all the high prices. Okay. So in this case, this portion is called as consumer surplus, because that is the excess amount of surplus left with the consumer. Clear? So consumer surplus, as the diagram says, understand that it is the excess money that he was willing to pay, but he has to pay only so much. So all the people who are willing to pay so much money on the above part of the curve is called as consumer surplus. So if you see a diagram, demand curve, supply curve, so price is only so much. So these people have benefited by paying this price and not this price. Clear with that? So obviously it's also the value that the consumer has received, right, from following the market price. Correct? And similarly, there's also a surplus, a supplier surplus, which is called seller, where this supplier was willing to supply this price, this price, this price, but he's supplying this price. So this amount becomes the part of the producer surplus. Okay, so we have consumer surplus and we have producer surplus. Clear? Okay, from the diagram. So producer surplus also same, the amount that he's willing to sell at minus the actual amount that he got, which is much greater than what he's willing to sell at. Okay, which takes us to the concept of what is price and value. Okay, so essentially if you look at it, I'm looking at, look at this. Now what actually happens is people try to exploit the benefit of the surplus by charging that much. Let's say example, have you ever seen PVR or any of these theaters? They have differential pricing, right? Though it's the same show at the same time, let's say a Saturday evening show, right? You'll see different theaters, different seats have different prices. Different shows have different timings. Why? Because that's the price that the consumer is willing to pay. People are willing to pay more money for an evening show because they have office, they're not office. People are willing to not willing to pay money in the morning after because they are office. So what is the theater doing? They are charging more money for later shows, more money for tickets at the back, more money for recliners, more money for the seats behind, because that is the amount of money they're willing to pay and people are tapping into money. So that's called differential pricing, where I'll charge you differently for different types of, I'll say same product, but different types of places. Correct? I'm trying to take the consumer surplus away. All right. So this is helping me to earn the value that I actually am getting. Clear? If you look at this diagram, basically, this is a market price. Let's say this is a demand. Essentially, this is the surplus I could have made. I could have probably charged this guy 10, this guy 9, this guy 8, and so on. By doing this, I'm able to tap into the money that people are willing to pay, right? So that value which I could have tapped is viewed too from looking at the surplus diagram. Okay, so price is what you actually pay, correct? Value is what one was willing to pay, and they get the benefit. Okay, you'll see I told you earlier, I explained to you the concept earlier of producer surplus. This supplier was willing to supply at this price, this price, this price, this price, but he finally supplied this price. So this portion is equal to producer surplus. Okay, the excess, the benefit he receives from selling the goods and services in the market at the price that is in the market. Clear? That is called producer surplus. Any questions? So are we clear? Producer surplus and consumer surplus. Okay. Now you'll see the formula is basically the amount that is in the market minus the amount that they're willing to pay. Okay. Again, it is the value. So remember, I want to make sure that whatever this consumer surplus is there or producer surplus is there, I want to try and remove it or rather tap into it so that there is efficiencies, right? So if I want to achieve allocative efficiency, basically I want to make sure that I maximize the benefits of consumer and producer surplus. I can try to do that, right? Why to waste this region that's there? That surplus is not being tapped into, right? So what I could do is try to tap into the surpluses and charge a price different for different customers, right? Which is what monopolistic competition do or monopoly do. They'll charge differently so that they can charge and tap the surplus and make it theirs. Clear? So that is what we can do by doing this. But if you do that, you'll end up in a situation where you'll have a dead weight loss. Correct? If you look at, let's look at this diagram quickly. I have a situation where this is my supply curve, this is my demand curve, right? And obviously the intersection is my equilibrium price. Correct? Now, let's say I decide to charge not this price, but this price. Let's say I decide to charge this price, it's a little higher price, right? Then what will happen with that effectively? I'm able to take some of the surplus into my profits, correct? But don't forget, there will still be some surplus left out from all this, okay? So you'll see this is a price at which I'm willing to charge. This is a price at which maybe willing to supply, okay? You'll notice that this was originally the amount of surplus, correct? And by charging either a higher or a lower price, I am taking away some of these surpluses. But I'm taking away only to this point, correct? Probably this much. But this point is still left out. ये वाला हिस्सा is still not tapped. Because I did this, it has become dead. Okay, so I call this as a dead weight loss. Correct? This is a loss which is a dead weight, which is useless, and I give it away. Clear? So when I'm trying to do some differential pricing, I'll end up with some dead weight loss, which will allow me to make sure that the efficiencies are there, but there'll be some inefficiencies. Correct? Now, on this concept, do you know what is the meaning of price ceiling and price floor? Price ceiling and price floor. The word price ceiling means I am trying to put the price, okay? I am trying to cap the price by keeping a ceiling. I'm saying, boss, you cannot charge more than a certain price. That's called price ceiling. Example, Rent Control Act and so on. You can't charge rent by so much. So what will produce is like, boss, if you don't let me charge what I want to charge, I will produce less. I will not produce as required because you're not letting me sell my own price. You're making me sell at a lower price. You're stopping my price, and therefore it leads to less production and underproduction. Let's come to price floor. A price floor means a producers, right? They are basically charging you and paying, charging some amount of money. In a price floor, the government tries to say that you cannot force someone to sell at a price below certain price. So that means, let's say market price is around 80. The government say, no, sorry, you have to sell at nothing below 100. Got it? Nothing below 100. So in a price flow, the consumers say, boss, okay, fine. And the producers will charge more, a little bit more because there's a floor that is priced. So the very common example is farmers. If the farmers are selling their crops, the farmers are actually getting a support from the government like MSP and say, fine, you can sell these crops, don't go below a certain price. Clear? So price ceiling, price flow concept is understood, very important, price ceiling and price flow. Okay. Now, when I said there's a deadweight loss, right? It's obviously a loss to the overall society because you have certain inefficiencies, right? And why it's occurring? Because equilibrium is not achieved. You've done a resource allocation, it's probably inefficient, and therefore you have no equilibrium, complete equilibrium. Okay, government obviously restriction. Now, what leads to deadweight loss? Government comes and says, boss, let's give subsidy. Let's impose taxes. Let's keep a price ceiling, price floor. They say, let's keep an upper limit. So they boss, no, I'm not interested. Let's keep a low limit. They may not be interested. So low limit supply, not interested, upper limit, the consumer may not be interested, right? So in this case, you'll have to ensure that there is something better thought of. Okay, price ceiling, price floor. So these are the reasons why a deadweight loss always arises. Aussie deadweight loss leads to inefficiencies, right? And look at the examples. Ceiling का डालता हूँ, Rent Control Act. Floor means you can't pay anything less than that amount. Clear? Entry and entry restrictions are always there, obviously. Public goods, common resources, and external costs and external benefits. Okay, all these are potentials why you'll find a deadweight loss has actually happened. Okay, it's important that you deal with it, obviously, because deadweight loss means there's some inefficient allocation which is not effective. Clear? Okay. Chalo. So with that, we have now covered the concepts of demand and supply. Any questions so far? Now, come to a very interesting topic, elasticity. Now, elasticity of demand refers to basically how sensitive a person is to a change in price. Let's say if the price went up by 10%, your quantity demanded should ideally fall, right? Obviously, long demand. But will it fall by 10%? Or will it fall by 50%? Or will it fall by just 2%? So, if a person is more sensitive, less sensitive, that refers to elasticity. 445. Okay. So, elasticity means the extent of sensitivity of a person to a change in price. Correct? How much is he reacting? Okay. So, obviously, the formula is the percentage change in quantity demanded to a percentage change in price. Clear? Now, if this formula gives you an answer that is very high, that means you're very elastic. You're like, dude, if the answer is low, that means you're like not elastic. And obviously, if the answer is exact one, it means you're perfectly elastic. Let's look at the examples quickly. So everyone knows that this is your normal demand curve, right? And this is how it looks like. As the price goes down, your demand goes up. You notice the amount of demand increase and price decreases same. Very much, right? And so obviously here, my elasticity of demand would more or less be -1. -1 goes the falling down, right? So my rate of change in demand and price is same. But let's say the demand curve looks like this, right? Now look here. My price is this, quantity is this. As the price goes down by so much, my quantity demanded went up by so much. Notice a small fall in price led to such a big increase in demand. Correct? And why is that? Because you realize the slope I showed is more flat. Right? But obviously this can happen. This does happen. Where you're more sensitive, you're like, Arey yaar, chhod, price बढ़ गया, let me demand much less. Or price fell down, I'll demand much more. Clear? This is where your demand is said to be more elastic. More elastic. Example, let's say fridges, ACs maybe, people are feeling hot. If suddenly a price fall down, people, more people will enter the market. So they're more elastic goods and services. Clear? Okay. Now, let's look at the third scenario. The demand curve looks like this. Correct? The demand curve looks like this. Let's look at this demand price. The price fell down so much, demand went up only so much. The price fell here. You'll see the price, I'm going to say the price fell by such a big amount and the demand went up by such a small amount. What does that mean? It means that the people are not so sensitive. But chota increase or small increase. So they are more inelastic. Best example, let's say someone's thirsty, wants water. I mean, the price goes up, he'll still have water. Maybe less water, but he'll still have, right? Fark nahi padega. He has to buy it as a part of his normal operational needs, right? So there are three scenarios for elasticity. Unitary elastic, where I'm reacting the same. More elastic, I'm reacting much more. Inelastic, I'm reacting less. right? Now, apart from this relatively inelastic, there's one more scenario which is like this straight line where I am buying everything, right, at this price. Okay, this is a straight line, and my quantity demanded is effectively, right, effectively that much, no matter what the price is. No matter what the price could be 1, could be 10, could be 100, could be 10 million. I'm going to demand only so much. I won't demand more, I won't demand less. What is it referring to? Medicines and drugs and obviously medicinal habits which are required, right? If it's required, you can't say no, right? So that's why you don't make any impact on price. The price goes up, you'll still demand the same quantity. Clear? Right? Same way, I could have perfectly elastic where I'm saying the amount, okay? The amount of quantity demanded will effectively, right, be exact that much at that price. You'll buy unlimited. But the moment the price goes up or down by 1%, your demand becomes zero. You're like, boss, no, I'm not going to buy more than that. I will buy only at 20, not 20. Example, you go to a shop, you buy Bisleri, right? If you buy Bisleri bottle, how much you pay? 20 rupees, right? If he tells you pay 25, will you pay 25? You'll say, no, sorry, I'll go to another shop. You will not pay even 1 rupee more than 20 because you feel he's looting you. Same way if he offers you for 10, 20, 15 rupees, you'll say, no, I think something wrong with the bottle. So you're willing to buy nothing at a price above or below. You're buying only, you're buying only that amount at that price. Clear? That's called perfectly elastic. So we have two concepts, perfectly inelastic, perfectly elastic. So when you think of elasticity, remember to learn 4 types of elasticities. Okay. Now that is obviously price elasticity of demand means where my demand and price, correct? The demand and price are being compared. Now suppose I want to compare income elasticity of demand. That means I'm comparing income to demand. Right? That means my income goes up, my demand will go up or go down. Instead, the formula is that. Elasticity is nothing but the change in quantity demanded to change income. अगर तेरा income बढ़ा, then your demand goes up. That is called income. So how sensitive are you to a change, right, in the income or the quantity demand? How sensitive are you is what's important. Clear? So obviously, if income elasticity is more than 1, right, then you have to call it as a luxury good. Normally, when will your demand go up if income goes up? When the goods are luxury or when you want to, really buy no matter what. Okay. So luxury goods are if it's more, normal goods are if it's positive, just normal. And less than 1, you look at inferior goods. Clear? So income elasticity means the formula में एक ही चीज change हुआ, वो है income. Clear? Okay. So we did price as a demand, we did income elasticity. Now, what is cross price? Now, cross elasticity. Okay. Now, if you know that price elasticity is price to demand, income is income to demand, cross is price of one goods to the quantity demand of another good. So let's say अगर Pepsi का price increase, then the Coke का quantity demanded will be what? So quantity demanded of X versus quantity demanded of Y. Clear? Quantity demanded X, sorry, versus price. Okay. So the price of Y, let's say, goes up. What's the impact on quantity demand of X? Obviously, price of Y goes up, the quantity demand of Y will go down. But the quantity demand X might go up if X is a substitute. Clear? People are price का भाव बढ़ गया यार. Let's say Pepsi Coke. Let's say people have Pepsi or Coke. They're like, price of Coke is going up. They're like, fine, let's have Pepsi. So you notice the price of one aspect may impact the quantity of another aspect if they are related, complementary, substitutes, or whatever, right? Like coffee, tea, right? Coke, sugar, Pepsi. So these are all substitutes. A person will normally look at the person would normally look at these amounts to find out. Okay. And this is important. So what is critical? The equation. If your cross elasticity is more than one, matlab there is a cross elasticity. If the price goes up, the quantity demanded also went up. Why do you think this went up? Because this is in direct competition with this. Let's say price of Coke went up, then Pepsi का quantity demand बढ़ेगा ही बढ़ेगा because Pepsi is competing with Coke. Clear? So that will change. So if they're going up together, then they are substitutes. But if this goes up and this fellow also falls down, they are complementary. Clear? Okay. So this is how potentially you will look at it and understand why would you buy more if the price went up, right? That's a separate aspect. Okay. So income elasticity, if the price goes up, demand also goes up. That means it is a substitute. Price goes up, demand goes down, right? That means it is complementary. Right? It's affecting it in the same manner. Clear? Okay. So we learned price elasticity of demand, we learned income elasticity of demand, and we learned cross elasticity of demand. Let's quickly look at the various diagrams I already explained earlier slide. I have this, and this. Okay. Obviously, if you look at price elasticity of demand, okay. So you'll see where the diagram is more flat, this is relatively elastic, which is more or less equal to 1, right? When the diagram is okay going more and more like this, it is tending towards elastic. So notice this is inelastic, but this suddenly is perfectly elastic. Clear? So this you'll have 5 diagrams: normal, more elastic, less elastic, perfectly elastic, and perfectly inelastic. You'll see this is perfectly elastic and perfectly elastic. Okay. So look out for these issues and scenarios where you are perfectly elastic, and then you can work it out. Clear? These 5 formulas are very important to understand the scenario. If your demand is more, you could obviously fall into, if your elasticity is more, right, then that means you have some this, otherwise you are okay, right? So you have to look at what elasticity of demand is. It depends on what angles, right? And then you can take it. Now, just like demand, even supply is on elasticity. So you can say, what is price elasticity of supply? Same. The rate at which supply has gone up to change price. Simple, right? So percentage change in quantity supplied to a percentage change in price. Obviously, if the rate of change is higher, it becomes more elastic. If it's lower, it becomes less elastic. Okay? Clear that? Now, what is price elasticity affected by? Obviously, many factors, but the most important factors, substitute hai ki nahi, are there competing goods? Are there other goods? Okay, what is the amount? What is the decision? Okay, are we looking at short term or long term? Short term, they'll probably react, but long term, will say, fine, we'll try to pick it up. Okay, so all of these will be potentially affected from there. Okay, so if you look at this diagram summary, you'll understand elasticity comes as price, income. Price may have cross may have substitute and complementary, right? And obviously, you have normal goods and you have inferior goods, right? And normal goods obviously are those goods which are normal, like they follow the demand curve, they are getting the amount, and so on. Okay. And inferior goods, obviously inferior goods which are inferior, and people will not buy them if they have more money. Clear? So inferior goods are an exception to that, and they don't follow the norm. Clear? Any questions on elasticity so far? None? Okay. So with that, we cover demand, supply, elasticity, and the works. We are exactly the halfway stage. Now, basically, let's look at the understanding. So if I want to interpret what is elasticity from a function, okay, this is a very important example. Understand carefully. This is a demand function where I'm telling you the quantity demand for a car is equal to minus 1 lakh, obviously because demand and price are inversely, minus 0.25 price of car, plus 20 income, I is income, plus 1,500 price of metro ticket, minus 800 into price of petrol. Okay. This is a demand function where the demand for a car is basically linked to four factors: car price, income, metro ticket price, and petrol price. Now you do realize that if you want to buy a car, your demand for car is going to be directly linked to the amount of income you have. So therefore it's a plus. It's also linked to the price of a metro ticket, correct? And therefore it's a plus, because the metro ticket is higher, you'll probably prefer a car, correct? So these two are directly related, so therefore the answer is plus. But you also know that petrol price will affect your demand for car. If the petrol price goes up, you won't want to buy a car, so therefore it's a minus. Okay, 800 is just a coefficient. And you also realize that the price of car is inversely impacting your demand, so therefore it's a minus. So hope you understood the first part of the equation, that where it's a plus, it is directly related, and where it's a minus, it is inversely related. Clear? That's exactly what the interpretation below is explaining. That car is a normal good. It has positive income elasticity, therefore it's a plus 20, correct? Which obviously means more income, you'll surely buy more cars. Metro is a substitute, and therefore it is having a positive coefficient, right? But you do know petrol is a complement, correct? And therefore it is negative coefficient. So understand the concept. Agar substitute is there, then it's positive because it will go up. And if it's a complement, it is inversely related, so it's negative. Clear? And obviously the price of car is directly demand rated. So therefore, if they do give you, that's interesting, they have given you three answers. They said the income is 10,000, metro ticket is 12, and petrol price is 70 rupees or dollars. In that case, you'll get this answer. I will demand a car based on 1,74,000 minus 0.25 price of car. So whatever the price of car, you will get the amount of quantity demanded. So the price of car is, let's say, just example, let's say is 500,000, 5 lakhs. Then you do not 5, say 10 lakhs, you do 174 minus 0.25 into 10 lakhs or 1 lakh and so on, right? Now, obviously, this is more in dollars, so therefore the amount is much smaller. But what is interesting here is to understand how to use this equation to arrive at price elasticity. So you can arrive at price elasticity, we discussed in the earlier before the break. It is nothing but the percentage change in quantity demanded upon percentage change in price. Change is triangle, correct? Now, obviously, you do realize that change in quantity demanded in percentage terms is nothing but the change in quantity demanded upon the original quantity demanded, right? And same way, percentage change in price is nothing but the change in price upon the original price, correct? So when I invert the equations and I put the numbers, I will get this equation, which is P upon Q, original P upon Q into change in Q upon change in P. Clear? So this is my price elasticity. Now let's understand what is the meaning of slope coefficient. Okay. Now you know that when I look at from the earlier slide, change in price, this part, change in Q upon change P, this is nothing but slope, right? Because slope is what? The rate of change. So the rate at which something changes is called the slope coefficient, correct? So in my price elasticity function, when I'm saying I want to find the change in Q upon change P into P upon Q, right? By rearranging this part is my change function, which refers to the slope coefficient, right? Slope. This you all know from the maths point of view, correct? So if I want to find out in this equation the price elasticity of quantity demanded for a car, okay, And obviously, I'll have to help you by giving you the price because I know this function, but I don't know what is the price of the car. So if I go on and tell you that the price of the car is assumed to be 4 lakhs, right? So then you'll have to go to a formula and say, if this is 4 lakhs, then the price, the quantity demand will be how much? 174 minus 0.25 into 4, which is 100,000. So I will say quantity demanded at 4 lakhs is 74,000. Correct? So I'll get the answer as 74,000. Correct? Okay, 74,000, which means that at a price of 400,000, my quantity is 74,000, correct? And the slope, which is nothing but change in Q upon change in P, is 0.25 negative, right? How I got that? From the original equation, I got that the slope is negative 0.25. This is slope, correct, of the equation. I hope you know the slope where it comes from the equation y is equal to mx plus c, correct, where m is a slope. So this is my slope of the number. So if I take the slope as minus 0.25 and I already found out for you the price and the quantity demanded, you can find out that elasticity of demand is equal to slope multiplied by original price of the car, which is 400,000, and the quantity demanded, that is 74,000. The answer comes to minus 1.35. Clear? So this is a very important interpretation where I'm able to use the demand function to arrive at the elasticity of demand. Okay. Now, what does minus 1.35 mean? Obviously, it's minus, which is normal goods, right? It should be inversely related. This means that it is more elastic or less elastic. Obviously, because the number is going beyond 1, I will say it is relatively more elastic. Clear? So that's the interpretation. Relatively, elasticity is greater. So that's relatively elastic. If it was less than 1, I'll say it is relatively inelastic. Clear? So please learn this interpretation well for a demand function and learn how to understand the variables, and the signages is very critical. Plus minus ka matlab kya hai? Income. The car 0.25 is a slope and the slope coefficient is used in the formula. Price elasticity slope into origin P upon Q. Put the slope, get the P and Q and get the answer. Okay, so that's your elasticity function. Now, let's look at revenue and price elasticity based on the linear demand curve. If you see any demand curve, right, you'll see that as the price reduces, the quantity demand is actually increasing, correct? Now, this also means that at every point on the demand curve, there is going to be a different type of elasticity, correct? And this is important to understand. Now, obviously, you know that if the price is, let's say, 15, let's say price is 10, demand is 5. The price is 5, demand is 10. If the price is 0, I mean, it's technically not possible, but yeah. So that's how it goes. Now, if I consider this point, I will get a different elasticity at every point, right? Because here, if I say, was a change in quantity demanded from this point to this point, okay, I'll get a different answer. Or let's say from this point to this point, this is quantity demanded is 10, price is 5, okay, and look at this point, yeah. Let's say point A to point B, okay. What is the quantity demanded here? 0 at 15, 5 at 10. So if I did the formula where I said is the rate of change in quantity demanded from A to B divided by the percent change in price. Okay, price has fallen by how much? 5, which is 33%. Quantity demanded has gone up by 5, which is also 33%. So potentially, if you see, it is going from minus 5, right? But if I go from this point to this point, if I do the maths, the answer is -1. Understood? From year to year, the answer is -5 because the quantity demanded is 0 to 5, and 0 to 5 is a very small number. But 5 to 10 is a bigger number. So the percentage change in the numerator will be impacted accordingly. Correct? So A to B -5, B to C -1. Obviously, C to D, if you go C to here, it will become much lesser. So what you understand is that the impact is much greater in this region. You see, -5 is much higher. That means you are more elastic. So on a demand curve, please understand the logic that on the upper part of the demand curve, you are more elastic and the elasticity is greater. On the lower part, you see this answer, point C, the answer is -1, which means it is unitary elastic. Unitary elastic means it is exactly -1, right? And that's only because you come on the lower part. So can I agree that on this part, you are more elastic? On this part, you are unitary elastic. And therefore, on this part, it is going to go to less than 1. Here is more than 1. Here is more than 1. Here is equal to 1. You will become less than 1, which is inelastic. So on a demand curve, there will be 3 points. Higher point will be more elastic. This point will be unitary and this point will be inelastic. And the proof is there for you to see. If you want to compute elasticity from, let's say, C to point D, you'll notice that this point, the answer will be less elastic. Okay? So please get this theory right. On a demand curve, on the top part of the curve, there is more elasticity. On the bottom part of the curve, there is less elasticity. Okay? You don't need to solve this potentially, but you have to understand the effect of this. Now, let's understand concepts of impact of demand. Okay, till now I've been telling you that as the price changes, the demand will also change. Just increase the fan, no? So why is that the price and the quantity demand are impacting the schedule? Okay, now there are two reasons for this, and there are two impacts. One is called the substitution impact or effect, and one is called the income effect. The substitution effect, let's understand that first, is basically where people are shifting, people are substituting the consumption of one good with another goods, right? Quick example, let's say the price of a daily commodity falls. So what do people do? They will shift their consumption. They will try to shift the consumption from this product. Let's say people buy normally Pepsi instead of Coke. They buy Pepsi. If the price of Coke falls, so what will people do? Instead of Pepsi, they'll start buying Coke because they're shifting their consumption towards more of the cheaper goods, right? This is called substitution effect. And this effect results in an increase in demand when the price falls, where people are substituting the cheaper goods, the costlier goods with the cheaper goods. Got it? They're shifting towards larger quantity of the cheaper goods. Clear? What is income effect? It is completely different from the price effect. It is where if the income of a person increases, then his capacity to buy something also increases. Correct? So therefore, he will probably buy more of those goods, right? That is called the income effect. Now, there could be some goods where if a person income increases, he'll say, no, I don't want to buy these goods now, I'll buy some other goods. That is called inferior goods. Let's say someone buys non-branded goods. Like he'll say, okay, I'll prefer to buy a little cheaper goods and non-branded. If his income increases a lot more suddenly, go up by 30%, he may say, okay, let me start buying some branded goods. So the demand for non-branded goods will go down and the demand for branded goods will go up, right? So here in the income effect, the inferior goods are having a negative income elasticity, right? Because the demand goes down because his income goes up. But same way, there may be some comfort goods where his income goes up, he will demand more. Let's say he'll say, "Chalo yaar, I'll buy one AC now, I'll buy probably an extra AC for the other room." His income went up. So what do you understand from this? In the income effect, if the goods are inferior goods, there is a negative income effect, right? Because he will buy less inferior goods with more income. But if they are comfort goods or luxury goods, right, that will have a positive income effect where his income going up will result in more demand for the goods. Clear? Okay. So understand this concept. Substitution is where you substitute it with a cheaper good. Income is where income goes up. You'll want to buy more or maybe less of the inferior good. Now this income effect results in four scenarios. Okay, let's learn the four scenarios. What if both effects are positive? You want to substitute cheaper and you also income has gone up and you want to buy more. If that happens, obviously the consumption is bound to go up because both are working in the same direction, right? And here I'm talking about normal goods where consumption increases because price fell and people are substituting, and income goes up. He wants to buy more. He wants to probably consume more food, more comfort goods, and so on. So if both are positive, demand will go up when obviously demand will go up with more consumption, right? If both are positive. Now let's come to scenario 2. This is important. Inferior goods, I already explained to you, where income effect is negative, correct? So people say, boss, income has gone up, let me not buy. So if a person income goes up, he'll say, boss, I'm going to reduce it, but decrease in price of the inferior good will obviously increase the consumption because there's also a substitution effect, right? Now here it's important to understand which effect is dominating, right? Which effect will dominate? Will the substitution effect dominate or will the income effect dominate, right? If the price decreases, obviously consumption increases, substitution effect. If the price decreases, consumption may decrease because income effect is dominant. So substitution effect will always increase the demand, but his income effect may say, boss, no, hang on, let me buy better goods. It may decrease. Now your job, here it is important to find out which effect might dominate. Now they are saying, obviously you see scenarios, increase in consumption due to substitution effect dominates the decrease in consumption due to income effect. Right or wrong? So consumption will increase because substitution and decrease income. But overall, the consumption will increase because of substitution effect, causing overall consumption to increase. Right or wrong? But it will not increase as much as in the scenario number 1. Clear? Okay. So inferior goods, you'll still find that people will buy more because the substitution effect is much larger than the income effect. Correct? And this is scenario number 2. So the earlier scenario was where both are positive and it shot up. Here, one is positive, one is negative, but it's still shot up because the impact is lesser. Correct? Now here, it's a little opposite of that, where substitution effect is obviously positive, but income effect is more dominant. They're like, boss, no, I want to really replace. So your income effect is dominating. In the earlier slide, what I told you, the substitution effect is dominating. Correct? In the next scenario, the income effect dominates, which means the goods demand will actually fall. Right or wrong? So substitute effect is saying, let's increase the demand, income is declare demand, and effectively you'll end up in a different scenario, right? Here, I will give the example of Giffen goods. Giffen goods. Giffen goods is where as the prices fall, the quantity demanded also starts falling. And as the price increases, the demand also increases, right? Why? Because the income effect is more dominant, right? So you know that if the prices are falling, the demand should increase, but ultra demand is falling. Why? Because the income effect took over. The person has more income to spend, his income has gone up, he's dominating the substitution effect. Is that clear? So here it's a very weird situation where the demand curve is upward sloping. And this is an exception to a law of demand called given goods. Yeah, it was you. Ask her. Okay. The fourth scenario. So quickly to recap, I taught you a scenario where both are increasing, where one increasing but less than the other, one increasing more than the other. And scenario number 4, where potentially the demand for the goods are increasing with increasing price. Okay, called Veblen goods. Example, branded goods, let's say Louis Vuitton or Mercedes, BMW. All of these goods are desirable high prices. People are like, boss, I want luxury goods. So, like iPhone, the more the phone price increases, the more the quantity demanded. People don't really look at, the phone price fell, so we'll buy more. Or the phone price went up, iPhone demand will go down. Has that ever happened till date? No, right? Because iPhones and all are Veblen goods. So they got a loyalty, market demand, and they're also linked to the fact that people want costly items and therefore they are more attractive at a higher price. Clear, guys? Okay. So these 4 scenarios are very important. I mean, they normally ask every time one question on one of these 4 scenarios, which you should learn well to attempt this scenario. Okay. And keep thinking substitution effect, income effect. Which effect is more dominant? That effect will have an impact on the quantity demanded. And please think of the type of goods. Scenario 1 is normal goods. Scenario 2 is inferior. Scenario 3 is my given goods. And 4 is Veblen, like Louis Vuitton, Mercedes, and so on. Clear, guys? Okay. Now, with that knowledge, let's move on to the last part of the broad discussion, which is the factors of production. Okay. Now, remember the start I told you factor of production, nothing but land, labor, capital. You guys are not asking any questions. Please ask if you have doubts, guys. I'm not getting any response. You guys are around. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay, so with that, we have now completed the demand and supply part of things, along with elasticity and the effect, okay, of elasticity and so on. Okay, now let's go to factors of production. Okay, now factor of production also a micro concept. It leads a bit to macro, but this is a very important concept for the lecture tomorrow. So please listen carefully, because this will help with our diagrams and our interpretative learning with graphs. Okay. Now, what is factor of production? We already discussed at the start. It is land, labor, okay, raw materials, capital, and basically entrepreneur, right? Now, if you think of it, land is used for production and we pay rent, labor is wages. Raw materials is a part of your production purposes. Now, normally, if you can break down factors, you can break it down into only 2 aspects, labor and capital. This is simplicity. Huh? Now that land is not a factor, but just because land is sort of limited, right? We call it more of, it's a fixed factor, it's man-made, natural. We try to look at the quantity is a function of the amount of capital and the amount of labor. Okay. Obviously, if I keep one constant and increase the other, my quantity will increase. Correct? Which is obvious, right? So if I invest more capital and labor is constant, my quantity increase. If I put same capital but I increase my labor, my quantity increase. But normally, labor is the dominant factor because labor is directly related to the increase in production. So output of labor with every unit of labor is called marginal product. Now, you know the word marginal, and I'll repeat it very often today and tomorrow, is nothing but the incremental production, right? So as I keep adding one labor, the production will increase in an incremental manner, right or wrong? Now you do realize, that's very important learning, that as let's say labor works for 2 hours and he produces 1 unit. Okay, look at this. Quantity of labor, this is a very important diagram, and output. Now if the labor works for let's say 1 hour, okay, he will produce maybe no, let's say 5 hours, he produces let's say 1 unit. If he works for 10 hours, you will think that he's producing 2 units, but he may produce 2.5 or 3 units. If he works for 15 hours, it is not 3 units, it'll probably be 5 units, right? 20 hours, he'll produce maybe double the units. So what is happening here, understand carefully, the labor is more and more productive. He is becoming more and more productive, which is why it's so steep. Why? Why is this incremental output so high here? Any idea? Can you guys guess or tell me? What's important? Answer, guys. As the labor produces more and more with every hour, his efficiency is increasing. Why? He's producing more every incremental units. Yes, no? No idea? Attempt. You guys also face it. That's why you guys also are a part of that labor force who are becoming more efficient with every production. Why? No? Other people? So when you study, you normally study for first hour, you'll study 10 pages, maybe. Next hour, you might study 12 pages, 14 pages, right? Have you ever observed that? That you study more with every half an hour, 1 hour? Or you probably do the same task. When you do the same task again, you'll do the same task faster. Have you noticed that? Why? Come on. So the concept of learning curve. Okay. So basically, a labor and any human being, when they do the same task repeatedly, the learning curve kicks in, and they'll do the same task faster, and they have incremental marginal output. Therefore, you'll see the marginal product is increasing to the stage. But after a point, the same labor gets a little frustrated and bored of the same task. So therefore, it starts decreasing till here. And after the tipping point, let's say 1 साल वही काम कर रहा है, it starts becoming negative. So this is why you'll notice the marginal product of labor is an upward slope till here and then a downward slope. This part is where the learning curve is high and the efficiencies are very high. And this part is where it becomes negative. Clear? This is called marginal productivity of labor. Clear? So obviously the definition is the change in output for every incremental unit of labor. Now, if I want to ask you what the formula for that, you'll say the marginal productivity of labor is nothing but the change. So nothing but the output that you had with the last unit, right? Minus the output that you had with the earlier unit. Okay? If you're senior, then make a ready now. What is the average product of labor? Average. Obviously, I have a very simple formula. It's the total amount that you produce divided by the total number of labor units. Right? That's quite straightforward. So, this law of diminishing, like I told you, start law of diminishing marginal utility is where your utility falls with every consumption. The same way, we have the law of diminishing marginal returns, which says that more and more units as they get added, your returns will come to a point where the output will increase, but at a diminishing rate. But bear in mind, it does not come immediately, because immediately you have increase in returns to scale, you have learning curve, and so on. But later, there comes a point where the returns will increase, but at a decreasing rate. And that is when the marginal product will shrink. Clear? Now, obviously, that means what do you do? How do you maintain it? Simple. Your decision is let me continue to keep producing till my marginal revenue and my marginal cost are same. So this is a very important theory. We'll do this tomorrow also. Your profits are maximized at the point when your incremental revenue is equal to your incremental cost. Obviously, because every extra revenue should be matched by extra cost, and then you stop. That's your maximum profits. Clear? If we come to cost aspect, now everyone knows that in the costing world, we have two types of cost. We have variable cost and fixed cost. Variable costs are what? Costs which vary, which are per unit, same, and they are directly variable with the production. So if I produce one, $10, two, $20, three, $30, five, $50, 10, $100, and so on. Fixed cost is fixed. It is fixed per annum or per period. So whether you produce 1 unit or 1 million units, your fixed cost will not change, right? Costs are a function of both variable and fixed, correct? Obviously, total cost will be a function of total variable cost and total fixed cost. Clear? So if they ask you the formulas, you know how to work it out. VC into units is your total variable cost, right? Variable cost per unit into the number of units is your total variable cost. But fixed cost is always fixed, so don't bother to multiply, right? Now this is interesting. What is marginal cost? Simple. Is the incremental cost. So the total cost that you incurred from the nth unit and the total cost that you incurred from the earlier unit. The difference in the cost is the change in cost. That's nothing but the increase in the total cost, which is because you have increased your output by 1. So if I produce 10 units, I incurred 500, and 11 units, I incurred 540. The incremental cost of 1 unit is 40. Correct? That's your marginal cost. Okay? Formula is there, but understand the concept. Is the cost of the additional unit. What is average cost? Very simple. You know the formula. Average is nothing but total upon units. So if I ask you what is average variable cost, total variable cost upon total units, average fixed cost, total fixed upon total units, and average total cost is total cost, which is average total cost is normally the total cost upon quantity produced, right? Or you add both the average fixed and average variable. Clear? Sunk cost is what? The cost that has already been incurred and is sunk. You won't incur the cost at all. Clear? So there are concepts of operating costs that you need to understand. All right. Listen, get her ready. She can leave with me or she'll come with you. Leave with me, better I have a car. Okay. Or you want to take her, it's fine. Now let's go to cost curves. Okay. Now, obviously, I just explained to you how the costing works, right? Now let's look at the cost curves. Okay. Obviously, let's say this is cost and this is your units, right? Units. So you know that your fixed cost will be fixed no matter what. Whether you produce 0 units or 1 million units, your fixed cost will be fixed, right? Your variable cost will be 0 at 0, correct? And obviously, it will effectively then keep increasing as you produce more units. But remember, so I will try to make a straight line. This is your total variable cost and this is your total fixed cost, which therefore means my total cost will look like this, right? My total cost will look like this, right? Why is it parallel? Because this difference is equal to my total fixed cost. Got it? If I produce 0 units, my will cost so much and increases. My total cost always starts with my fixed cost, correct? And this difference is my fixed cost. Now you'll notice that the actual graph on the right hand side is a curve. Go get ready. Is a curve which goes like this. Okay, now I'll explain the reason for this curve. If you see here, it goes like this, right? And then it slides down and then again increases. Why? Why is this happening? Because of the earlier slide I told you, my variable cost initially will increase as I produce more, but then it will reduce because of increasing returns to scale, right? Example, if you have learning curve, you have bargains, you have bulk pricing. But after one point, again, it will go up. So variable cost will initially increase as you buy more, then dip because of economy of scale, and then go up. Total cost is entirely a function of variable cost. Totally. Okay. And that's also going to follow the same dip as your variable cost. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So get the graph understanding, but if you don't get the curve, that's fine. Understand the direction of the curve. Okay. And more importantly, marginal cost. Now let's quickly look at the computations to understand this. So you see calculations before you. This is the calculation to prove to you how the curves are working. So if you quickly see the numbers, don't worry about the calculation. They will not ask you the numbers, but this is to understand the numbers. Fixed cost, is always going to be fixed potentially, right? Variable cost, as you can see, 0, 100, 200, 300. It's potentially increasing. And it increases first slowly, then increases at increase. You see 3, 5 units, 200, 300. Total cost, you'll notice, has increased consistently. Average fixed cost is very clearly decreasing because your total fixed cost is the same and your quantity has increased. So therefore, we know that average fixed cost has to decrease. There's no choice. Average variable cost will initially increase because you're using more and more and the cost is higher. But later, because of learning curve effect and other factors, it will reduce and after a point again increase, right? So first it will increase, then it will reduce and then again increase. That's because the learning curve other factor. Average cost is completely a mix of fixed cost and variable cost. Average cost, you'll notice, is consistently potentially reducing and after one point it will obviously increase because of this economy of scale, right? Marginal cost, most importantly, is the incremental cost, which is first going to increase, then it'll decrease, and then again it starts increasing. Okay, so these numbers are only to show you how the cost curve works. Okay, so I don't want to go into numbers right now, but it's an example to show you that the cost curve is looking like this. Average fixed cost, downward sloping. Average variable cost and total cost is always going to be U-shaped. Okay, which means it will first. So if you see like this, my quantity and cost, as my quantity increases, my average cost will initially decrease and then starts increasing. It decreases, then starts increasing. Why is that happening? Because initially we have learning curve, we have economy of scale, and therefore it will go down. Obviously, we have average fixed cost also, right? So you see the diagram helps you understand that average total and variable costs are U-shaped. Obviously, ABC is because of the initial concept of the diminishing returns and so on. Okay. Now, the difference between, I told you earlier in the chart also, the difference between ATC and ABC will always be there, but the decrease, the change is on account of the average fixed cost. The difference is fixed cost, right? Now let's come to the marginal cost. From the earlier diagram, if you see, marginal cost is initially increasing, then decreases. Correct? So marginal cost curve also slopes downward and then it slopes upward. Clear? Now this is the most important learning which you should identify. The marginal cost curve will always touch the average cost at its lowest point. Okay. So the marginal cost is nothing but the incremental rate increase in cost. Initially it decreases, but when it starts increasing, average cost curve is still falling. It will potentially touch the average cost curve at the lowest point. After this point, the average cost curve also will start increasing. Notice that. This is very important understanding. So therefore understand MC will always touch the AC ATC curve at the lowest point. AFC curve obviously is keep on decreasing. That's because fixed cost is constant. Clear? So whenever you draw the AVC curve, right? AVC curve is here and the ATC curve is a little higher. Remember, MC curve should always intersect them at their lowest point. Obviously, here is somewhere common, right? But MC curve should always be touching them. You can't draw MC curve like this. It has to be at the lowest point. Clear with the logic? Because if you get that wrong, your diagram will be correct, wrong. Then your understanding also may be wrong. Okay. Obviously, if MC is above ATC, then ATC will start falling. Okay. So understand that MC starts from below AC, ATC, and then later after it touches them, it goes above. You want proof? Check here. AVC, ATC curve are falling here, right? And MC curve was falling, but then starts going up, right? But the moment the MC curve touches the AC curve, AVC curve started going up. The moment MC curve touched the ATC curve, the ATC curve started going up. So notice that when it touches them, obviously it'll touch at different points, these costs will start increasing. That's because it touches them at the lowest point. Clear, guys? Very important interpretation. Okay?
So,
Yeah.
so what is the logic behind this? Like when these two costs become equal, the
Mhm.
total of variable cost, average variable cost, and average total cost increases after that point. So what is the
Yeah.
logic behind it?
The logic is what is MC first? Marginal incremental cost, right? When the incremental cost is increasing at a faster rate, matlab, for producing one extra unit, you have to incur, let's say average cost is 20, okay? And marginal cost is obviously incremental cost will always be slightly lower. The moment the incremental cost is increasing to above average cost, it will pull the average up. पहला तेरा average नीचे जाएगा. But when incremental cost is increasing greater proportionate and it is equal to the average cost, it will pull the average up and increase it to beyond that point. That is the law of the cost curve. So the logic is only because the incremental cost is increasing at a higher rate than the average cost. तो पूरा average ही हिल रहा ना तेरा. So same you see when the marginal cost is 33, 50, ठीक है. But the moment it touched 50, two things happened. It went higher than 50 also. It went high to 100. Or yeah, 53 gaya. Why? Because it is an average. But this movement is so high कि पूरा average को ऊपर ले लेगा वो. And that movement happens only when it touches the curve, when both are equal. After that point, the increase in the cost is much higher than the overall average. Got it? That's why this feature is there, where you'll notice that marginal cost is always lower than average cost. But at the point it touches, its rate of increase is so high कि ये पूरा average ऊपर जाने लगेगा. The full average will change. Okay? And
Yes, sir.
also, at which point will it change? At the point when there is this economy of scale. At the point when your learning curve is no longer effective, at the point when your discounts also not getting, that's the point when your full average will start going up. Okay. So, through try and tested methods, it is proved that the marginal cost will always pull up the average cost. Any questions? Now, let's go on to the next part. Okay, product curves and cost curves. Now, obviously, the cost curve I just taught you will be the same, don't worry. Now, product curve is obviously the opposite of cost curve. Agar cost curve, if your cost curve is first going down and then up, right? Because the costs are initially increasing because economy and then decreasing and then increasing. The product curve is ulta. Your productivity or your products is initially going to increase and after a point, it will decrease. है ना? So product curve is a ulta U and a cost curve is a proper U shape. Right? Now why is product curve ulta U? Because it is nothing but the amount of output per unit of labor, which initially is much higher and then it reduces. correct? Because of learning curve and other effects. So always remember, and but the logic remains same. Here also, if you see, I told you MC intersects AC at the lowest point. MP will intersect AP at the highest point. Same logic. Okay, look here. This is my AP curve. This is my MP curve. MP curve is going. MP also will be first higher, then it will fall down. After it intersects the AP, AP starts falling and MP starts falling more than AP. Logic is the same. Okay, so MC intersects AC at the lowest point and MP intersects AP at the highest point. Same logic, same funda. Okay, and this is often asked in exams in a very indirect term where they'll ask you MC curve, AC curve relationship. They'll ask you MC is falling, AC rising. They'll ask you in some twisted way. Get your concepts clear. You'll be able to answer the theory question. Example here: when MP is falling, MC rising, it maximizes AP and minimizes AVC. That is clear. At the point intersection, AP is maximized and AVC is minimized. Logic is fine. After this point, AP falls and AVC goes up. So this is to show you that the concept is the same. Obviously, one applies to product and one applies to cost, right? Now, why is it diagram important? Because I need to then connect them to the concept of uh, loss and profit, right? Now, if you look at this, quickly look at this diagram. Let me draw it in my own and I'll show the diagram. You know that quantity and price is here, right? You know that the price in perfect complement, let's say a bottle of Bisleri is 20 rupees. Anything. Limca is 40, Pepsi. So the price of anything is constant, right? Fixed. Abhi, if you want to buy at 20 rupees, you want to buy one Bisleri or 100 Bisleris, you'll get 20 rupees only. I won't give discount. If you want to buy Pepsi, Limca, right? Apart from the price discount MRP, the quantity will be unlimited at the fixed price. Correct? Now let's look at the cost curve. Okay. Now you have AC curve. Okay. The AC curve, I'll draw the three curves. I'll draw the ATC curve, total cost curve. ATC curve, okay, in this is above, it's like this. And you know MC curve will intersect at this point. Correct? Lowest point. So here are MC curve. This is my ATC curve. Now what does this indicate to you? Understand carefully. Okay. You are saying that I'll produce effectively the amount where MC equals to MR. So I'll produce so much. Correct? This is my quantity. So this is your total revenue. But at this point, your total cost is so much. Correct? I have to extend it to this point. My cost is so much. So you agree this is your loss region. Correct? Your revenue is so much, your MC is so much, and your total cost is so much. So if I connect the dots, this region is the amount where I'm incurring more cost than my revenue. So this is my loss region. This is always going to happen in the short run because your marginal cost will always be increasing and your total cost will be higher than your revenue, right? Why is it happening in short run? Because in the short run, your fixed cost is not recovered. Therefore, you will have a short run loss and obviously a long run loss if you continue to have a higher loss. The firm will experience losses as long as your ATC curve, look here, is lying above your price curve. Obviously, the ATC curve is below, then you'll make a profit because your average cost is less than your revenue, right? So firm will always make a profit or loss in this case. Now, this is a very interesting slide, very helpful. Understand the break-even point and the shutdown point. Look carefully. Let's put it like this. This is my market price. Okay. That's my market price. This is my ATC curve. Okay. Obviously, AVC curve will be below ATC curve, right? AVC curve is always going to be average will cost. And let's say this is the MC curve, which again intersect here and here. Okay. This is MC curve. Now you will notice that at this price, at this point, you are able to meet only a variable cost, right or wrong? So at this point, you are able to meet a variable cost just about, which is okay, not helpful. But you're not able to meet a fixed cost, total cost. So do you agree that this is the point at which you'll say, boss, if I'm still here, I'll survive. If I go below this point, I need to shut down. Correct? So that's my shutdown point. Below that point, I'll shut down. That's why in the long run, short run, I'm shutting down below the point. Right? Okay. But
Yeah.
if I'm not able to meet my fixed cost, I'll still survive. I'll still survive. Correct? But I will operate only if I'm able to reach my total cost. So therefore, I'm saying that I'll operate in short run, but I won't continue forever in this region. Because in this region, I'm able to meet only my real costs, but my fixed costs are not being met. So I will continue till I feel that there is no future. So if it's a long run phenomenon, I'll shut down. If it's a short run, I'll continue. This point is the point at which my total cost and revenue are equal. So this point is called my break-even point. Because at that point, I'm making no profit, no loss. But effectively, I'm making economic profit. Clear? So you have to learn 3 points. One point is a shutdown point, below which will shut down. You're like, boss, if wheel cost is not covered, I will not make anything. So this point and below is shut down. This point to this point is where you'll operate, but only in the short run, long run shut down. And that point and above is your profit point. So here you're saying I'll break even, and above that I will make only profits. Clear? So this is a very important diagram to understand the concept of shutdown point, break-even point, and obviously long run shutdown, long run and short run shutdown. Clear? And that's what they're explaining here using. Now remember, this is under perfect competition. Okay, and I'll come to competitions tomorrow, where I'll teach you what is perfect competition, what is monopolistic, what is monopoly, and so on. I'll teach you that tomorrow. Okay, so this is how the diagram potentially looks like. Okay, and just remind me, I'll pick up these tomorrow because the competitions are very important. You'll notice that if your revenue is this much, if your cost is above revenue, right? Let's say revenue looks like this. Your cost will always be higher because fixed costs, then it'll go lower, then again it'll increase. So here you're making a loss, here you're making a loss, and here you're making a profit. So as long as revenue is more than cost, you're making a profit. But here cost is above revenue, you're making a loss. Correct? So these diagrams help you to understand which is the point at which you should continue production. Obviously, you won't stop here because you know that eventually you'll come into a profit region. But when you pass a profit and you go into a loss, you'll stop here because here the loss is unlimited. Clear? So these concepts are critical from a short run and a long run. Now, what is short run? Short run is where you can't change much. You're like, boss, I'm limited. Only one input is fixed, right? In the long run, you can change everything, right? So in the long run, you'll notice that you have economic scale. Eventually, you'll have diseconomies. So first, you'll have learning curve, then you'll have non-learning curve, you'll have frustration, you'll have bargaining power, you'll have discounts. So in the short run, you don't have these benefits. In the long run, all of these benefits will give you diminishing returns and diminishing productivity. Clear? So why this happens? Because of two concepts, economy of scale and diseconomy of scale. Economy of scale is basically where I am able to increase my production and benefit from specialization, fixed cost recovery, learning curve, and so on. Diseconomy is where I'm able to increase my cost because there are inefficiencies, workers are impacted. That is diseconomy scale. Clear? So that's why in the long run, you'll notice that the cost curve will always be first downward, then upward. Downward is because of economies, upward is because of diseconomies. And the reasons I've discussed with you multiple times. Clear? And again, the same curve, we have the marginal productivity curve, the average worker curve, all of them follow the ulta U. Okay, and they tend to always be first increasing, then decreasing, right? The same concepts. Okay, and that's because of your productivity. Okay, now the concept of profit maximization, I will pick up with you tomorrow. We have to do based on a scenario, but marginal revenue profit is nothing but the marginal increase in your productivity. Okay, and what is profit max? Now, this is a very important concept which will be pick up tomorrow for sure in multiple scenarios. Remember, profit maximization is the point at which marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. Okay, so the moment your marginal cost equals marginal revenue, your profit is said to be maximized. Clear? Okay. So
Okay.
tomorrow we'll
So,
see scenarios where these will help you decide the price at which you want to sell. Okay. Yeah, go on.
also in the previous one where we were
Mhm.
talking about the profits and cost, uh,
Yeah,
there are some of the brands which only sell seasonal products. So how does it
right.
work for them? So because they only make profits in that particular season. So is it that they should shut down in the seasons where they're not making profits, or they should
No,
continue the production and
so what they would do to answer your question is they would make the production in the non-season and pile up the inventory for the season. Okay, so I am not telling you short run, long run from a year point of view. You can't say, Acha, in January to December, let's say Jan to March is winter season. So that is my short run, long run. No, short run, long run means 5 years. Long run is 5 years, short run is like 2 years. Okay, so within that 1, 2 years, that is a short run, they will produce for 5, 6 months for the busy season of 3, 4 months. Okay, so that is short run, long run. Long run is where I'm looking at a 5 to 10 years where I can change my scale, I can buy a new plant, I can increase my labor. That is called long run, where everything can be changed. Seasonal are not short run or long run. Seasonal is also a part of your long run only effectively. Correct? So there
okay, sir.
also they'll decide how much to make in the non-busy season so that they can match the production in the busy season. So they'll also, plan their production accordingly to match the demand in the busy season. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So please read these for tomorrow because when you do it tomorrow, the different type of competition, you'll realize these slides are very helpful to understand what exactly is competition. So all this MR, MC curves will be more important for tomorrow. Obviously, this part of it you all have understood broadly because of recap of the earlier knowledge. Okay, but these are critical from tomorrow understanding. Okay, so please don't miss tomorrow's morning's lecture where I'll pick up the different types of competitions and also teach you how in each type of competition the MC, MR, AC, how these curves are actually going to be interpreted to give you the loss and the profit regions because you should know what profit and what loss is created in which scenario. Okay, all right, thanks. Take care.